Hey everybody, it's Eli again. It's been a long time since I've done a video. Um, my regular D&D groups have sort of subsided for a while, and so D&D hasn't really been forefront of my mind. Have been doing some other gaming on the side, some board gaming, working on my sculpting, and actually some writing for fiction and everything. At the same time, I've also had, one of my kids has been moving out, so that's been interesting, relocating the child and the dynamic that goes with that. And then, of course, the upheaval within the home. So, the garage space is still the same, so it's still mine and it's still kind of here doing my thing. But I just, haven't had a lot of time to, or have had time, but I've been devoting it elsewhere. The channel is still on my mind, still, wanting to do stuff. And some stuff has been coming up in the last few weeks that really got me thinking about what it is. Well, actually, not what it is, but kind of got me thinking. It's like this weird confluence of several occurrences that really brought a topic to mind. And this is kind of on the subject of the interpersonal aspects of running a game. And kind of it's been touched on a lot, but there's some cases that have happened in my game alone. In my game, when I was running it, it will be run some more. So don't worry, Aerolith and all of that'll still be around. Just have to get back to doing that. We have to work our way through a Star Wars campaign first. But so some things that happened in my game that deal with the interpersonal relationships between the player and the DM. But also some stuff I've been hearing on various forums, and a friend of mine had an instance which really kind of, as a longtime DM, kind of got my hackles up. It's one of those where this was really sort of a crappy move. Late night, need coffee. So first off, let me start with the occurrence in my campaign. So my Aerolith game is made up of, and I've mentioned this before in other videos, but it's made up of a pretty widespread experience base as far as D&D. I have one player who is an experienced player. He's kind of like me, has been playing since he was a little kid. He's what I kind of sort of like to call a lifestyle gamer. He's multi-generations of D&D. In his particular case, he's even multi-generational in that a older family member that wasn't like an older brother or something. I think it was his uncle or something, taught him how to play D&D. So I've got that, and then I've got one player who has played before in the past and is coming back to it, but is an avid gamer in the midst. Actually, my two middle players are kind of different shades of that. We've got one player who's kind of a little new, he's played D&D a little bit more recently than the other one, but both of them are also gamers. They have that mindset. They play video games, they play strategy games, they play board games, miniatures, tactical games. So they're still gamers, but they haven't had a chance to really play a sit-down RPG for a while, tabletop RPG. And then there's one of my players who's brand new. This is the first time he's ever been at a table. So I've got a pretty wide group, so I get an interesting collection of situations, player to DM and DM to player, or player to player for that matter. So in this particular instance, in my game, I had a character a player in my group who had a very interesting character background, but as the DM, I felt he wasn't really playing to his character's background. He clearly wanted to. This isn't a case of me forcing him to play something that he didn't want to play, but I could tell that he wanted to play this character closer to as written, but wasn't. He had written all this stuff into his background, and he was kind of flirting around the edges of it, but seemed a little loath to commit to it. He was unsure of his actions in regard to the other characters, so not player to player, but character to player. But this particular player also, he's that sort of personality who I think player to player informs character to character for him. There's not as much of a degree of separation as there might be some other players, and so most of my players are coworkers. In fact, currently Yeah, I mean, up until recently, all of them were. So it just became, while walking out to our cars at night, talking to this player, after work, and really getting into it, like, hey, I noticed you've been wanting to do this thing with your character, or at least it seems like you want to do with your character. Here's my thoughts on how you could improve that. And it's never me telling him what to do, but it is something, hey, here's some options. I know this player likes, is this kind of a person. This player is this kind of a person. A lot of it was empowering him to advocate for his character and for his character to advocate for himself. So, and I think there's a difference there. So a player advocating for his character can be different very much than his character advocating for himself. In this case, the character was wanting to take actions. He was being rebuffed by the rest of the party in character, not player to player, but character to character, and he was backing off on that. So the player wanted to do things, and his character wanted to do things, but he was backing off from doing them, or he was doing them in ways that were. He was finding ways to do them that were almost bordering on disruptive, a little bit in the realm of, screw you, I'm going to do what I want. So I kind of had to talk to him and say, okay, look, if you want your character to do these things, and your character himself is wanting to do these things, but your character is interested or concerned about how the other characters are going to react to him. And I'm stressing character because this is really where I think it comes down to. Players can think whatever they want, but when it comes down to it, it's your character that matters. The player's feelings and everything, that's certainly a sacred thing on the table, but really your character can be a much different person than you are. I feel that most people who are playing thieves are not really thieves themselves, and most people who play barbarians are a little bit more civilized than their character might be. And those people who are playing paladins are very likely less brave and brazen as a paladin might be. So it was a matter of letting him know that, hey, if you want to do this, here are some ways that I feel that you could do that and have it maybe be less frictionable. I mean, so you're not, if you want to take the thing, but the party is saying don't take the thing, don't just back down as a player. Have your character state his case. Speak your mind. Make a argument for why you should take that stuff, or what it is that you're taking, or what you're going to do. Ultimately, the other characters can oppose that, but it should be a character-to-character dialogue. And I really wanted to work with him and let him know that was good. But but to do that, I had to, as a person, as a DM to a player, and as a friend to a friend, talk to him and say, look, it's okay to do this. We're all at the table. We've all got our different personalities, and we all want to. We're all on the same trip, but we all have different ideas of what it is that we want to go to, what we want to do. You're on your trip to the Grand Canyon. Some people want to look for goats. Some people want to ride a burro. Some people just want to get down to the bottom and see what's at the bottom. Some people want to look at the view. We can all do that. We just need to make sure that we respect everybody's options, and that you're not in such a rush to get to the bottom of the canyon that you don't pass up the chance to ride a burro, or you don't chase away the billy goats, or whatever it is they have there. So that was in my game, trying to help this player feel better about the actions he was trying to take as a player, but also his character was taking as a character. This character has a lot of potential to bring something to the table. There are a lot of good questy plot hooks in this character's background that I think would make a great trip for the rest of the party. So that's one case. Now, I've heard a couple things through the forums. I want to touch forums before I get into another one that's specifically another friend of mine. But so on the forums, I've been seeing a lot of you always get your questions of what's a good way to do this, what's a good way to do that, how to do this, how to do that. And there's some times when those are legitimate questions. You're always going to have newbies, new folks into the game who aren't quite sure. We've gone through a couple of editions of D&D where They were very rules heavy, rules specific, and the culture that I think came out of that in the game is not so much what older gamers like myself, 30 plus years as a DM, came up with very much rulings over rules, and where the DM and the players were kind of a little more free form. We've had some editions of games recently of D&D, but other games that are very rules heavy and very system specific. They spell everything out, and it's harder for some people who are new to the hobby, or maybe who started out with those, to understand that the rules are a base. They're not the be-all, end-all. All of us flex on rules, and all of us bend rules. And as a DM, you have that prerogative. And your players, certainly you should feel comfortable with your players discussing options, as long as they're not opposing your rulings and they're not breaking the rules without talking. You're making characters, and we're coming up with stories, and we're coming up with adventures in these games. We're not trying to be dictators. We're not trying to be dogmatic as a DM. So there's room for that, which kind of goes into this situation from one of the forums. And I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to name the forum, and I'm sure anybody who's on the forum who is watching the show will recognize the situation. But there was an instance just today on one of the posts where we had a player who was playing a class, kind of an alternate class that had been agreed upon by the DM. Well down the road in the game, several sessions, quite a bit of fun, quite a bit of play into the game. The player became aware of a mistake in reading the rules, interpretation of the rules, whatever. But basically, they had been playing a part of that character wrong. Being honest, they brought it to the attention of the DM. But here's where it falls apart, and this is where I think that communication really needed to come in. So in this situation, the DM stood by rule as written, raw. They stood by the raw, and that's especially if they've been having fun. But not just that, the player then presents an option to the DM to bring the character more into the rules and maintaining sort of the spirit of the character. The DM also rebuffed them at this as well. So this is where I have a problem. The DM and the player had been playing with this error in the character for some time, and they had both been having fun. From what I understand by reading the description, of course I only have the one player's commentary, said this is kind of one-sided, but just as a thought experiment. Where is the harm in letting things continue as broken? So the player was playing the character wrong. They'd been playing it that way. That's how the character is. I as a DM wouldn't see any reason to have to just correct it, bring it back in line with the rule as written. This could be that extra little bit that makes this character special. Just maybe with a little bit of the understanding that, okay, if you ever make a similar character or a character with the same kind of an issue down the road, it's going to be raw from there on. But what also bugs me is that in this case the DM was inflexible. It didn't let the player brought the mistake to the attention of the DM. First of all, the player is being honest. They should not be penalized for that. So the player is being told, no, you can't play it. You can't use that with this ability. You can't use that ability. You can't use that ability with this. So that combo is no longer valid. But I'm also not going to let you take I'm not going to let you take an alternate ability instead that would bring it back into line and let you continue to play your character. So they're double nerfing the player. That is not okay. So first of all, there's that issue with the DM ruling. Don't be a dick. And you definitely want to make sure that you're having a dialogue, that you're not being inflexible. Now, here's some of the other problems I have with what's been coming on. And granted, internet communities are what they are, and there's always going to be you've got your different proportions. Good, honest feedback. People who don't care. People who just want to see things burn. So, in this case, there's a lot of people who are just advocating for leaving the table. I don't agree with that either. While I may not agree with what the DM's rule in this case, I also feel that it would be a mistake for the player to just give up and leave. You know, taking your ball and going home doesn't help anybody. I don't expect the player to get mad and table flip or be a jerk or whatever. You know, there was some advocation for, you know, resorting to trickery on a new character to get back at the DM and other forms of weird kind of snarky snide thing. No, you're just diminishing yourself and the game at that point. If you're gonna argue your case, argue it honestly and earnestly. You have to, but I mean, as a player, you certainly are well within your rights to stand up for your character. Now, be a human being about it. Be decent about it. Have a dialogue with your DM. If you're not going to have it at the table, or maybe that initial interaction you got really mad about it because it didn't seem fair, allow some time for those emotions to settle down. Those feelings are going to come. They're going to be there. They're honest feelings. You feel like you've been cheated. Let those filter out. Come back and talk again later on. Maybe you and the DM can come to a good conclusion. Maybe you can state your case in a way. Hey, we've been playing it this way along. I've been having fun. Have you been having fun? You know, I brought it to your attention. I'm not trying to cheat. We honestly were playing this rule wrong. But, you know, it's like I would, when, you know, with my kids when they're growing up, and we would, you know, a lot of times when you're playing board games with kids, you know, there's a rush to get the game on the table, and sometimes you just get the game and you jump into play and you realize that you've been playing the rule wrong. One of the things that me, and even with my adult friends when we're playing board games, and suddenly we realize that, you know, maybe we're playing third edition whatever board game and we're remembering a rule from second, and so we're playing it wrong, or maybe we interpreted the rule wrong on the first read through. As long as everybody's breaking the rule in the same way consistently, it's as good as another rule. So in this case with this DM and this player, if you've both been enjoying yourself with this broken rule, who cares? Let it go. But definitely as a player, advocate for your character, advocate for yourself, and make sure that you are having that dialogue with the DM. Be respectful. And as a DM, hear your players out. You're doing yourself no favor if you're not hearing your player out. So that leads perfectly into this final scenario. This happened to a friend of mine, a member of my group, who does something that I really avoid, and that's just personal taste. But he's been playing in a group at a table openly at a game store. Okay. So again, not going to name names, not going to name the name of the store, but a couple of game sessions into the game, he is confronted by the GM, who asks him to leave. Cites some, claims it's a unanimous decision by the rest of the players. Just don't want you back. He asks why, and he's told that the GM, that the player, this particular player who's being asked to leave, gives him consternation. So that was my original. That's all I heard originally. And a few days later, we're sitting around the game table, and I got the whole story, and it went really far. So, in addition to the consternation, evidently this DM thought that it was important enough to resort to letters to be left with the store owner to be delivered to this player at their next meeting. Just a hint, your game store may do a lot of things for you. You may feel really at home there, and you may be able to have them do you the occasional solid. They are not a message service for you. Don't treat them like one. If you give them a letter or some other communication, yeah, they might be able to pass it on, but they are trying to run a business, and they've got other things on their mind. So anyways, that's just an aside. So this letter was, was lofty. It was, you know, the language was very officious. It was highfalutin. It was the type of thing that was just, using words like insist and, like, you, first of all, really, I mean, one player to another, I mean, you're going to insist as as the GM to this game, you're going to insist that I don't come back, and you're going to speak for the rest of the party, the rest of the players, that they insist that you don't come back. That alone is a little weighty. But then to go into it, I guess the letter continued on and went into like some sort of oddly veiled threat about having spoken to the store owners about this and making them aware of the situation. Like, I've told the sheriff in town, don't come back. I mean, or else there'll be trouble. Whatever. It's a game. So where this breaks down, though, is for me, and the reason I'm bringing it up on this topic of communication between players and DMs, you're gonna see lots of videos about this all over the internet from other people and their takes on it, and it's a constant point because it is key. So this particular player wasn't even given a chance to address the table. All he had to do, the only thing he could verify is that the DM, GM, whatever you want to term him, he didn't want him back and was claiming to be speaking for the group as a whole. Now, given the overly officious, self-important language of the letter, and yes, I know the letter, it seems dubious. I've never sat down at a table full of people where there was just an absolute unwillingness to speak to people. Now, granted, my game experience may be a lot different than a lot of people. I've never played much with stranger groups. Started playing with what kids I could find in grade school, that worked up through middle school and high school, still playing with friends. As an adult, I played with roommates who were also friends. And in my adult life, independent family life, I play with my family and I play with my friends. Occasionally we bring in new people from outside the group, but it's always a much more intimate, solid group. It's by invitation, usually based on the reputation of somebody else. And we just have if player A is bringing in a new guy, I know player A, so I know this new guy is okay. My current D&D group is all new players to the group, except for one of the players, and me. We're part of the old group that kind of has life got in the way. So right there, that sends up, a red flag. Why isn't the player being able to state his case? Why isn't he being able to address the players? What did he do wrong? Now, I got some skinny on things that he feels may have caused this. And I will say that in both cases, they're topics for another video. Yeah. One is an honest mistake based on character information, which happens to overlay real-world socio-political aspects of the player playing that character that may have been transposed. In other words, reactions to the character may have been read as reactions to the player. I'm not going to get into it. Don't want to make this a political video. But if you can see, there are aspects of people's real life which, unfortunately, if they worked into their character but weren't aware of it, comments in regard to the character could be misplaced, or there could be a misperception that they were at the player. So put into that what you will, but so that would have been one of the issues that this player that I'm talking about may have had with the players in the group. The DM issue, where the DM claims he gives him consternation, you make me feel uncomfortable, or you're problematic, or you cause me trouble, Or, and here's the thing, in this case, it's nothing of the sort. It's a player being cagier or challenging to the well-laid plans of the DM. The scenario, as it was presented to me by the guy from my gaming group, was that the DM is very story oriented. Nothing wrong with that to at all. The adventure seemed to be a bit on rails. Now, being on rails, not necessarily a bad thing. If you got Matt Colville's recent video, one of his recent videos, he even talks about the difference between being on rails and railroading. He didn't make up the terms, but he did a good video on it. So bounce on over to Matt's page and you can get into that. But anyways, whatever the case is, it really sounds like a situation where this DM just is that DM that we all know that he has his world built and all the pieces move around as he wants them to, and he's going to fight to protect that tooth and nail, and he just can't deal with a player who is thinking and acting. You know, there was a situation where evidently there's some sort of boarding action or something, and my friend, came up with a course of action that monkey wrenched the GM's plot to the point where he felt he needed to get up to take a moment. Regrouping is not a bad thing as a DM. It's a good thing. If something happens and you need a couple of moments to figure it out, you can do so. Be honest with your players and don't make a drama thing out of it. Certainly get hey dudes, wasn't planning for this. Give me a second. If you're an experienced DM, you'll just roll with it, or you'll fumble along and catch your stride. You might have a couple of stumbles, but you'll eventually pick up. So communication was denied my friend, the player in this scenario. And that, to me, is intolerable. It's unconscionable. You have to talk. To be able to pass summary judgment on a player at a table outside of some grossly inappropriate behavior is such a foreign concept to me. I can't abide. He was telling this story and I'm just like, what? And because I would never do that. I mean, first of all, I'm not going to get mad because you spoil my plans. There's plenty of adventure in the universe. But to sit there and turn that into we don't want you to come back, and not even let the player talk to the rest of the players, why? Why would you do that to somebody, especially somebody who you invited to play the game? And if it did come down to that, why make a big thing out of it? Here's the deal: if you're going to go that far and you're going to ask somebody to leave, first let them have their voice. Let them state their case. A lot of times these decisions they're rash decisions made out of misunderstandings. Maybe, you're playing the way you've always played, and this new group they have a different style, they have a different pace, maybe a different experience level. Maybe it is possible to be an advanced player in a newer group, and you're just going to come across as this, ubermensch, god level player who's just wrecking the fun for everybody else. That's fine. That's going to happen. But talk to people. Come on. Don't just kick them out. And if you are going to kick them out, don't resort to dramatic crap like letters and big language and, what's next? You're going to hire a herald to walk into the shop, blow the horn, and unfurl his scroll, hear ye. No. You come up to the guy and say, look, dude, I really appreciate you jumping in on the game. We've had a couple of sessions. I don't think it's a good match. There's been some issues. With the players have mentioned some issues. I'm having a hard time meshing my DMing style to your play style. Be honest, be upfront, be casual about it. Just like, dude, it's just not working out. You know, I've got 5 other players at the table, and they're all chill and they're all cool with the way that we're doing things. You know, would you mind stepping out? You know, it's not the end of the world. It's a game. You know, there's a lot of commentary, I think, building up to this, and I think, you know, I don't want to be a bad guy, person, but you know, there's a lot to be said for the reasons people are playing games. Some people are playing games just to play games. Some people are playing games to power trip. Some people are playing games as an escape. Some people are playing games to find themselves. Some people are playing games for whatever reason. It's all interpersonal. And sometimes you're not going to have a group that's comfortable enough to communicate, but there's got to be one person in that group to be able to speak up. And if that's the DM, well, don't be a jerk about it. Don't make a big deal about it. Just, you know, keep it casual. Shake hands, move on. Go to the next table. Go to the next game. But don't be don't be dramatic about it. You know, save the drama for the table. So, anyways, trying to keep my target here for, you know, shorter videos. I don't want to overstep the thing. But 3 scenarios about player to DM interaction that I think are worth mentioning. It's not a very nuts and bolts kind of a video. We'll do some more of those down the road, and I'm sure once I'm playing, once I'm running my game again and back to a more regular gaming schedule, there'll be more videos. But, you know, really, if you're a player, talk to your DM. If you're a DM, talk to your players. If you're a player, talk to the other players. Make sure everybody's having fun, and make sure you're keeping it real. Don't be weird. Don't make it weird. Just play the game. All right, anyways, this is Eli with Elfbait. You have yourself a great one, and get out and game. Bye.